Hello and welcome to the Fit for Privacy podcast, the podcast for those who care about privacy. I'm your host Punit Bhatia, and here we have conversations with industry leaders about their perspectives, ideas, and opinions relating to privacy and data protection matters. Before we start, a quick disclaimer that the views and opinions expressed are not legal advice. So let's get started. Would you pay to protect your privacy? Yes, you heard me right. Would you pay to protect your privacy? I don't know if you would or I would, but that's an interesting question. That's a fascinating question. And that's why I have two gentlemen named Josh Gottesman and Akul Bali, who are the co-founders of a company called Privee, which is a social media platform, with the difference being it's ad-free and it helps protect your privacy. Yes, a social media platform that helps protect privacy. It seems counterintuitive because in social media, you go there, you post, and then you expect to connect with others. But here they are saying they will help you make money through daily content or daily prices on content. And also, you will pay to join the platform. You will have a subscription fee. Now, that's an interesting idea. And we are going to have a conversation with them about Privee, of course, but more importantly, around what are their views about privacy, because both of them have worked in Google. And we want to know what they think about privacy. How do they think a social media platform can help protect privacy, and so on. So let's have a conversation with them and listen to them. So guys, as I promised that I will bring two gentlemen who will talk about paying for privacy or respecting privacy. And here we are. So Josh and Akul, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Great to be here.
So let's start with telling us about yourselves, saying, how did you get into privacy? What has been your journey?
Yeah, for sure. Happy to start. So my kind of introduction to privacy happened during my time at Google. So before we left to start our current venture, I worked in BizOps at Google, where I did a couple different things. One was focusing on YouTube ads product strategy, and the second one was Alphabet's overarching privacy strategy. So kind of got to see the privacy world from both perspectives, both kind of the uses of data for ad targeting purposes and how that's evolving over time to become less data reliant as the regulations and landscape shifts. And also on the other side of, as a large tech company, kind of what are the difficulties and issues that need to be contended with to solve these privacy issues. So that was kind of my introduction to privacy. Learned a lot there, and that's definitely helped kind of shape how we're building out our own venture now.
Yeah, normally we say,
go ahead.
Normally we say that it's the big tech that's creating privacy issues. So it's interesting that you first create the issue, just as a joke, and then you're trying to solve it. That's very fascinating. But it's good to hear that companies like the big tech also play a part, and they do their best to protect privacy. Of course, their vision and their larger vision is very different.
Yeah, for sure. A lot of the issues are driven by your business model, right? So in the case of Google, you're an ad-supported model, but I can't speak to all of big tech, but at least at Google, there was, a general focus of like, okay, how can we start mitigating these issues or pivoting or improving our stance on privacy? And so, yeah, it's definitely a very interesting field, lots that can be done. And yeah, it's good to see some of the companies trying to do it, at least try to be better about it.
Sure. And Josh, so what's your story?
Yeah, so similar to Akul, my primary introduction was with working at Google. So I was working on a project that was related to privacy, and we were looking at consumer attitudes towards it and whether they have changed their behavior as a result of internet privacy and whether they'd actually be willing to pay for privacy in certain aspects. So that got us thinking more and more about privacy as well as Akul's work. And then last June, the two of us started talking deeply about privacy, specifically around social media, and then we really dove in together.
Wow, so I should have held my comment before. Never mind. It happened in the flow of things. And you would have heard about GDPR. So when you think about GDPR, what's the one word that comes to your mind? And let's start with Josh this time, if it's okay for you guys.
First one for me is transparency. Just this idea that you actually as a company, you actually have to allow customers to take more control of their data, which ends up leading to more transparency, which overall is definitely good for the consumer and the public at large.
Wonderful. And Akul?
I'd go with progress. I think, historically, innovation's always outpaced regulation. So this is kind of a step in the right direction of regulatory bodies kind of catching up, understanding how a lot of these systems work and putting in place guardrails to protect, societal interests.
Yeah. And when we talk about privacy, there are usually two perspectives. One, the negative one saying the privacy is gone, the big tech has all the data and nothing can be done, it's all too late. The second perspective is privacy is still worth it, and your personal data is worth a price. And then there are two models saying you should pay people for privacy or people should pay to keep privacy. So where does your thought process resonate? Will people pay for privacy or should we pay people for privacy? How does it work in your minds? And maybe we start with Akul this time, if it's okay.
Yeah, for sure. So obviously we looked into the market, right, before we left Google to start our own venture. And both from first-party consumer surveys as well as third-party research done by universities and nonprofits, there is a small but growing portion of the market that is willing to pay for privacy-preserving alternatives to a lot of the major services they use today, whether it's search, email, whatever it may be, social media, for instance. So there's a small but growing cohort. So there's definitely a market opportunity there.
Mm-hmm. Josh, maybe?
Yeah, so I obviously have a similar ideology here. I believe that people will end up paying for privacy, but what I believe will happen is rather than like the electric car approach, whereas Tesla came out and it was, okay, we're an electric car first. People don't think of it like that anymore. Now it's just, okay, Teslas are premium products that happen to be electric. So I believe that privacy preserving products will end up falling into that category as well as people get more familiar with the issue. So what will start as, okay, this product preserves my privacy, I want to use it, will turn into, okay, I just trust this company more. And as a result, it preserves my privacy, provides me a better experience. And I think we'll start to see this across many industries.
So if I interpret well, you're saying if a company is saying, pay me for your privacy, and then they can transparently demonstrate that they will respect privacy, there's an opportunity, there's a market for wherein a niche group of people, some people would pay, and there's a business model, there's a business opportunity in there.
Yep, agreed. That would be a subscription business model with that opportunity. And then in terms of the other one you've suggested, which essentially would be companies pay users for their data as a result, or the opposite of it, I think there may be an opportunity for that as well in the future. And technologies like Web 3.0 and decentralized technologies are going to allow that more and more in the future.
So would that mean that we will need to educate more users, more consumers about issues surrounding privacy, or you would say, let's target those who are already aware and interested in privacy?
I think there's definitely an educational component to it, right? You want more and more people aware of kind of what are the issues that exist with today's business models out there. Now, education from a third party will only take you so far. I think the best education is, when there's missteps by the big players. Obviously, you had Facebook Files, which was the Wall Street Journal expose, or the whistleblower coming out with like kind of everything that was going on behind the scenes there. And that's probably the best avenue for people to learn kind of, what happens behind the scenes at these companies and give them a better sense of kind of how much their privacy is worth and that they should value it. And it's not just a lost cause or by any means.
So what's your vision or mission when you say privacy, or you'll help protect privacy? What's your vision?
Yeah, sure. So our vision when we say we'll help protect privacy is to provide users with an alternative to what's out there today. Like you can readily use services today that are largely based on an ad-supported model, and in return, you basically pay with your data as the cost of using that service. What doesn't exist in the market today is an option to have a very similar service with similar capabilities and so forth, but where your data is not getting siphoned up by the company. And that's kind of what we want to provide. Like you can have a great social media experience, but you don't have to trade away every single thing you do in your daily life, like the location on your phone or what you're searching or what you're looking for outside of the platform. And so that's kind of our vision here of having a privacy preserving alternative in the social media space.
So privacy preserving social media alternative. So we understand social media as something of a free for time pass or things like that. That you do it when you don't have anything else to do. And of course, there are some privacy implications. And you're suggesting that it can be a privacy alternative in which people can or people would join from privacy perspective, because if you join on social media, you want to share things. So the idea is share, but yes, behind those shares, some data is analyzed and monetized. You're saying the company will not monetize, not analyze, or analyze in context of the user rather than in context of their own needs. Is that?
Exactly. That's correct, Punit. So our vision is a social media ecosystem where people are still sharing as they would like. They're going to be paying for the service as members of this community. We're not going to collect all of their data, track them across the internet, and try to manipulate and monetize off of it. We're just going to say, hey, we at Privee believe that we can provide you a great service. If you also think the service is great, you can choose to pay for it. If not, that's okay. You can continue using whatever service you would like in the current manner, which unfortunately does violate your privacy and have the ability to manipulate what you see and unfortunately how you actually think about the world if you go into the major consequences.
Interesting. So you believe then we will be able to address those issues, but then typically the question is when WhatsApp and Signal thing was being discussed, the challenge was people wanted to move from WhatsApp to Signal, some of them, or some of them were moving because it was the trend to do, but then they realized their friends were not there. So the very purpose of moving to a platform, whether it's WhatsApp or Signal, is you want to connect with your friends. But if your friends are not there, then you end up having both platforms. So so-called privacy enabling and privacy not so enabling, let's put it like that. So how would you address that question?
Yeah, so that's a great point, right? There's a lot of network effects involved inherently in a social media platform. The way we see it is as social media has evolved, it's both. People are going there to connect, people are also going there to consume content. Like if you look at, for instance, TikTok as an example, that's less of a connecting with your friends and family. That's more, I just want to consume interesting content. So as we build out our platform, Privee, the idea is to kind of give a one-stop shop where you have both. We're going to give you the capability to connect with your friends and family, since that's something that's gone away with the, very algorithmically driven feeds we see in most apps today, as well as give you the content consumption. So that allows us to an extent undercut the network requirements to start, where you might be an early adopter, you'll come there for the content consumption through our daily contests. And then over time, as more people join, you convince your friends and family, or they become more convinced of the value of privacy as they see the firestorm with Facebook going on. Then that way they'll eventually come over and you can kind of serve all your needs in one place. So that's kind of how we're thinking of it. We're give people at least some use case initially while they wait for their friends and family to migrate over.
That's interesting, but what's then the value proposition? Because you're saying it'll be TikTok, it'll be Instagram, it'll be Facebook, probably LinkedIn as well. So where's the value? Why do I use, for example, Privee? Or is that too aggressive question?
So Privee will not be like TikTok in terms of the viral videos that are just scrolling through. It'll be most similar to a combination of Instagram and Twitter without ads, without algorithms that are pushing you to see specific components. And then our new feature is this contest. So we'll have daily contests across different types of topics. So it could be something like the best dance video, best pickup line, best picture of a hamburger, right? And anyone can enter those contests, and then the different users will vote on them. And the person who wins or the people who win will actually win real money through Privee. So that's kind of our different look into social media today, taking what is already what people are already doing and making it more interactive, allowing them to actually win money and monetize their content versus just doing so with ads.
Interesting. So it sounds like mix of entertainment, gamification, and social media all combined.
Yep, that's correct. We think of social media as primarily entertainment, right? If you think about how it's evolved today, the main use case clearly is entertainment. And the point on that is that TikTok and Instagram each have over 1 billion users right now, and they're 95% entertainment. A lot of younger people actually do communicate directly with one another on Instagram, but TikTok, that's less common.
Yeah. So how does the solution work? What's the real thing? So I'm a user. I want to create an account, so I hope that'll still be the case.
Yeah,
How will
that's
it
correct.
work?
So in terms of tactically, yeah, so it would be an application. We'll have a beta version likely by early November, and it'd be very similar to what you just mentioned, right? Like you would join, you get an invite, you create an account, and then from that account you have, controls over your entire kind of online presence. So your privacy controls, notification controls, etc. You can choose what accounts to follow. You can sort your feeds. So as Josh mentioned, the idea is to take the stuff that everybody loves today of the existing major platforms and give you an environment where you have much more control over your experience. It's not an algorithm dictating what you're going to see next. It's rather you are back in control of like, no, I want to see this topic or that topic. And that's kind of how it would be tactically of create an account, pick your settings. You can change up what you see every day. It's not the algorithm deciding that yesterday you liked this, so today you're going to see more of that. So that's how it would look in practice.
So I would have absolutely no filtering of content. I will just get the content as usual. So my likes or comments don't influence the algorithm. Is that?
Got it. So to start, the algorithm will just be chronological, so most recent, in other words, or sortable by popularity over a given time frame with the people you follow or the Privee community at large. So that'll be the first implementation. And then later on, we know people still do want some level of personalization, but the issue we see in the market is the utter lack of control. So take an example like Instagram or TikTok today. Once you start looking at certain content, the algorithm determines that, okay, Akul just wants to see sports, fashion, and nature. There's almost nothing he can do to stop seeing sports, fashion, and nature content, right? So we want to say, okay, take that behavior, take what Akul is actually looking at and liking, and allow him to say, okay, yes, I'm seeing fashion, but maybe too much fashion. I'd like to see more content about pets, or I'd like to see more content about foods. So you have more control and granularity in the algorithm of what you're seeing that is personalized to you. So kind of putting the user back in the driver's seat rather than the company having complete control over what you see. And of course, in the example of, oh, Instagram is just serving you more sports and fashion content, obviously that's not very nefarious. There's no issue there. But it becomes an issue if all you're looking at is political content and they continue to serve you more and more fringe political content. That's how people end up radicalized. And that are some of the key issues we've seen over the past year and a half or so, especially with things like the insurrection.
Okay. And that's what you're going to address by giving them the choice what they can filter out. And certainly I won't be able to choose saying I want this kind of political affiliated content. It's more generic saying I want to see content about fashion, maybe pets, maybe friends or what my friends are doing that way, but not around sensitive topics. That would not be done by the platform and that would not be feasible to choose as well.
So around more sensitive topics, for instance, let's say politics, obviously that there we have to take a more nuanced approach, right? So it will be largely catered on, I want to see news content or political content, whatever it may be. But we as a platform aren't going to pick like, oh, you seem left-leaning, we're just going to show you left-leaning content, or you seem right-leaning, we'll just show right-leaning. Like to start, it'll be very simple. You want to see political content? Great, this is all the political content here. And then obviously we'll have content moderation capabilities built in from day one that control for any extreme perspectives, views, anything that could be illicit or illegal, of course, wouldn't be allowed on the platform.
Okay, that's interesting. So it would be available towards end of the year. And how can people enroll? Is there a website? Is there an app?
Yep. So right now, people can join the waitlist by going to joinprivee.com, and Privee is spelled Privee. And then once they join the waitlist, the first users will be let off the waitlist to join the app later this year, likely in the mid-November or early December timeframe. And then from there, we'll start to open it up more and more. And people who are current users will be able to invite others to join Privee as well.
That's cool. So in your view, when you see, if you had a choice, obviously, between paying for privacy versus getting a free product, you will choose, I believe, paid option and keep your privacy. Is that how you are as people?
Yeah, I'd say for the most part that holds true. It's obviously very situational, right? For instance, like
Exactly.
TV, it's not really a pick and choose, right? If you want to watch sports in the US, it's largely on broadcast television. So it's the free channels which have the ads. That being said, when it comes to more services and stuff, yeah, prefer, I'm willing to pay for no ads, privacy preserving experience. So like trying out privacy preserving search engines and that sort of stuff would kind of be more in the bucket I fall.
Interesting. So normally when we say we have to choose privacy, that's a first world concept, meaning that the basic needs are met. And when basic needs are threatened, then all these concepts that we talk about go out of the window. So in that context, if you had a choice between privacy and meeting basic needs, what would you choose? I know it's a tough one, but
just to clarify, are you defining basic needs as like food, water, shelter versus
exactly.
privacy? Oh, 100%. I mean, basic needs. Those are required for survival, right? Like if my survival's on the line, I'm definitely going to choose my survival over my right to privacy and not allow Facebook or TikTok to track me across the internet. That being said, I do believe privacy should be a fundamental right to people. And I think with the advent of business models on the internet, we've pushed more and more away from that. And ideally in the next 10 to 20 years, we move more towards an equilibrium there.
Yeah, I think building on Josh's point, like obviously basic needs, you kind of need that to survive. I think a lot of that perspective is also because today luxury for an internet or privacy is inherently a luxury when it comes to internet services for the most part. And that doesn't necessarily need to be true going forward into the future. I think as you reduce that barrier to having a privacy preserving service of any kind, then it becomes closer and closer to where it's maybe not necessarily a luxury that you have to pay for, just kind of baked into the underlying way things operate.
Makes sense. And I think, as we say, the hierarchy of needs determines what you value and what you need at that moment in time. Normally, I ask this question in context of privacy and security, but with you guys, I adapted it to saying, linking it to the basic needs. So if you had, as a company, $10,000 and you had a choice between making your systems more secure or making your systems more private, where would you choose to spend your money?
So that's a great question. The way I would see it, if we're investing in technical infrastructure, let's say, and your trade-offs are security and privacy, from my experience working at Google, you need the security to ensure the privacy of your data. Like one of the fundamental things at Google that I experienced, and I think most users experience, is Google security is very good, right? Somebody logs into your account or you log into your account, you immediately get an alert. And that's like step one to ensuring that you're protecting the privacy of your users' data. And once that structure is built, then you can invest into building your infrastructure to be more privacy preserving, whether it's being better about understanding where data is moving around within the company or how data is tagged and identified, stored, retention dates, and so forth. Obviously, a lot of that's also required by GDPR, but end of the day, those almost go hand in hand. Like you need security to ensure privacy.
Okay, so you would put your 10,000 in security.
Yeah, because I mean, you could have the best privacy infrastructure in the world, but if it's not secure and anyone can access it, that kind of defeats the privacy part of it.
Makes sense. And Josh, would you share that perspective?
I definitely share that perspective. That being said, I feel like it's a step change, right? So once you hit the threshold where security is good enough, obviously security for us will be a continual investment, and for most companies it is. But once you hit that threshold, that's where you can start saying, okay, it's time to dedicate lots of resources, know-how, and expertise into developing a really robust privacy infrastructure. But security definitely comes first, to Akul's point. Like if the doors are just open, the privacy won't matter.
I would agree with that. If there's no security, you can't guarantee privacy. So
Exactly.
there's no privacy without security. In fact, that's the quote one of our guests made long back in season 1.
It's a good quote.
Yeah, it stays and it resonates. But it's interesting to see how people choose between privacy and security investments with different perspectives. So, on a different note, if you were to choose between time and wisdom, what would you choose?
Can I get a definite, how are you defining wisdom here?
Oh, okay. Define wisdom. Okay,
Like,
so yeah, okay. Let me try. It's a philosophical question, but for me, wisdom is the ability to make the right choices, the ability to make good use of your resources, the ability to make sound judgment or sound decisions. And then time is that you have time, but you don't have any wisdom. So, yeah.
So if you don't have any wisdom, then I'd obviously rather have wisdom on the spectrum. I think the most important thing is figuring out how to handle your time in a wise way. I definitely would choose wisdom, but I also recognize that like time is the only currency that we can't get back. So it's very important from that perspective. I feel like it's a balance between the two.
Cool.
I mean, on the face of it, I was gonna say I'd pick time. To like Josh's point, it's the only non-renewable resource. Like once it's gone, time's gone. Wisdom, before we got into the definitions of it, in my mind was you gain wisdom through your experiences, through your missteps, through your successes. So if you have more time, you will eventually gain more wisdom. So go with the time.
Yeah, as I said, there's no right or wrong answer. When you say you have time and you can always gain wisdom through experience, but it'll take longer. But if you have wisdom and no time, then absolutely don't have anything to do also. So yeah, well, yeah, it's good inputs. So how do you see privacy evolving? You mentioned 10 to 15 years, privacy would change. So what's your vision for privacy in about 10 years time? And you also mentioned at the start in introduction about some research. So can you enlighten us about what you have seen, what's the trend, and how do you see privacy evolving?
Sure. I think the evolution we're seeing with privacy is that consumers are becoming much more aware of the value of having privacy, especially in the context of data privacy when it comes to internet services. I think in terms of 10 to 15 years down the road, you look at how the world is changing, it's going to become a bigger issue, right? As everything's becoming more connected. You have edge computing for everything from appliances to autonomous vehicles. So you're going to start hitting this kind of point of everything's collecting data to operate better. At the same time, people don't necessarily want everything being collected. And so I think in that sense, there's going to be a fair amount of pivot towards privacy preserving solutions, both technically or from a business standpoint, as well as there will likely need to be more regulation as the world becomes more connected. You start developing more smart cities and so forth. And like, how do you manage those kind of questions at the edge, right? If it's like a smart city detecting pedestrians per day, like what's happening with the AI tech that's doing facial recognition, like where's that data going, who's looking at it, and so forth. But that's a very high level perspective. If like we're talking 10, 15 years down the road, sure, Josh also has more to add here.
Yeah, so my feeling, and I'm no machine learning or artificial intelligence expert, but my feeling is that the trend since the internet has really evolved and machine learning became a thing is just to collect as much data as possible with everything you can see. And to be honest, that was definitely a learning I got and a feeling I got from working at Google. And I imagine it's very similar at other companies as well. So I think we'll start trending towards machine learning and artificial intelligence algorithms that don't require collecting every single piece of user data in every single situation in order to make good recommendations or in order to have good predictions around different models and systems that we have today. So I think the key there will be data minimization. This is something that Apple talks a lot about. Tim Cook has been pushing as well. I think that's what more and more companies will end up going towards rather than this smorgasbord of let's just collect all of the data, throw it in a buffet and see what we can end up doing with it. Like companies will be much, much more thoughtful around what data is collected, why, and how they're using it. And I think that will be a result of regulations that come into play, such as GDPR and others that will pop up. But as Akul mentioned earlier, it just takes time. The regulations are always further behind.
So in next 10 years, we will see more technology, more artificial intelligence, more robotics, more data-driven actions with scrutiny on privacy through the regulation as well as consumers, and a drive towards more privacy enhancing technologies as well as solutions and opportunities wherein people will need to decide which technology they opt for, which social media platform they opt for. Do they pay for their privacy or do they get paid for their data? That's the direction we are headed.
I hope that is the direction. I hope those two business models that you mentioned fully replace the current one, which is just take everyone's data, monetize it, and they don't get anything.
I hope not, because I think, as you mentioned, we will probably focus more on data minimization and transparency and more respect for consumer or respect for privacy.
Definitely.
So as it happens in these conversations, time just flies by, and today as well. So is there anything, one final message you would like to share, each of you, about Privee or about privacy or any other way?
I mean, I would just reiterate earlier, Privee will have our beta app out by the end of the year. So definitely join the wait list. We're always looking for more folks to try it out. Love to hear feedback from everyone. And yeah, always open to suggestions on things we could build or improve on the platform. And as Josh mentioned, websites joinprivee.com, Privee's Privee.com. Yeah.
Yeah, my last thing would be, if any of your listeners are interested in chatting with us about privacy or what we're doing at Privee and helping us build a better, healthier social media ecosystem, we're always happy to chat with people and help have them join us on the journey.
So you're on a mission to protect privacy in the social media world through a platform which will be secure and respects privacy. And any help or any ideas, any inputs in that direction would be helpful. So if somebody wants to contact you, somebody says, oh, sounds interesting, I want to have a chat with them, or of course you mentioned how to try your platform. So how can somebody contact you and have that conversation?
They can contact me on my email, josh@priveelabs.com. That is PRIVEE labs.com. And Akul has the same email with his first name, AKUL.
Perfect. It was a privilege and a pleasure to have this conversation with you and touch upon multiple topics around privacy. So thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having us, Punit. Happy to be back.
Appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Thanks for listening, and now we ask you for some help. Take a moment to subscribe and review this podcast. Your support matters. And if you have done it already, thank you so much. Now, if you have questions or suggestions, drop an email at hello@FIT4PRIVACY.com. And finally, if you know someone who will benefit from this, share this podcast with them and help us grow. Thank you so much. Stay safe and see you next time.